Okay, this lovely model gives us an idea where we've been today. We walked down the street right in front of that mosque. And I came in from the far corner, right corner, right in about there is where I entered it after having walked up alongside of that enclosed marketplace. And where we are now, of course, is right in that building there, right in the center. And there is the mosque at the center of the old marketplace. And then walking up to the left is where I was. That may be the original water tower in the middle that we saw a representation or a symbol of in wood. And there, of course, the river that we crossed over. And I think there the mosque, original mosque, that we walked by this morning, that was a much bigger complex today. And then I walked up into the hills a little bit behind that mosque and came back around and down through here, of course. And look at this old bell tower. This is a nice representation of a medieval warrior. Must have been heavy garb, but when you look closely at that metal covering or whatever it is on the legs, and the mail, of course, when you're getting sliced up by a sword like that, and you don't know where the cuts are coming from in the thick of those battles, this must have been a reassuring costume, to say the least. But notice how otherwise vulnerable was the Roman warrior. Now the far side of what we're seeing in this structure, the long portion in upper left, upper right, was that long covered market that we walked through. And beneath these ceilings or roofs was that archaeological site that we saw. And in the center, of course, the Carnavassary center court, if you will. In those lower areas is where horses and so forth would be stored, and then maybe goods also, and then above were the apartments of the traders. And notice this tall clock tower, or bell tower, next to the big mosque. I may have walked right by that. And across from the mosque, on the left side, is where I looked in through that front entrance to this portion. Interesting, the interpretive sign speaks of the city being designed as two parts. One, the Bakarcija, which was primarily the commercial market area, and then a series of neighborhoods or mahallas that surrounded it. And these mahallas normally comprised of 20 or 30 homes, each offset by tradition, so that as they marched up the hillside or whatever, each house had a view outward. And of course, the simplicity of the outside of the houses belied the incredible richness of the interiors. Some of the nasty weaponry of the past. How ornate these killing swords. Notice the curious handles. I wonder if the purpose of these handles was not to bludgeon, or was to bludgeon your adversary if you could not cut him up. costumes of an era, I suppose the Austrian-Hungarian era. I can't read the detail. But what I found interesting was this pair of shoes. How pretty and ornate they are. And notice the pearl inlay of that wall piece. It always intrigues me that history remembers a few of us who have done notable things in our time, as perhaps these men did, and the majority of us who are not ever mentioned because we contributed nothing of importance in our time, not to mention leaving any legacy. This was apparently the period of 1878. But how important each of us thinks our time is. In the background, call to prayer you can hear outside from the mosques. The technologies and entertainments of the past. Imagine the lady that owned and used that little purse, I think it is, or the man who owned the clock and those cufflinks. And the entertainment and the events that the accordion was used at. If only they could speak. I'm inside this lovely pastry shop, which just so happens to be very warm, and got a croissant that she enticed me into by issuing the word chocolate. There in the corner is my little pastry shop, and we're now at the river again, and I'll wander through this park and then go back behind myself to look at the clock tower, which I missed. And of course, earlier today I walked up in that direction. Across from this large, simple, administrative-looking building, on all this greenery is this little park that we're walking through with some kind of a Islamic-looking gazebo-type thing. Some more archaeological remains, which I have yet to discover the significance of. But as you can see, there was an inner courtyard with that fountain, or that well at least, and there were pillars all around it, or at least on this side. Here were the individual rooms, it looks like, although I don't know what those spaces in between that look like walkways would have been for. My guess is this is some kind of a mosque, because across on the other side we see the remains of a cemetery. The Basarkisia is behind those buildings, and all along there is the street that I walked earlier this morning. But here an interesting building, if for no other reason than the architectural accoutrements on top. And there a very curious onion-shaped little pinnacle on that building. Dropping back a little bit, it's obvious looking at this minaret that those are the ruins of a mosque. That's two hints. Guess is that the building we looked at a moment ago is a modern version of what once stood here. But at least this has been preserved, and that's a good thing for the future. There's some electrical wiring strewn about, so I assume they're going to glorify this with night lights. I'm always impressed by the subtlety of the graphics and artwork of mosques, such as this calligraphy. Once you wander about in a town, you wander about in an old town like this, you realize it's a relatively constricted area, and you get pretty familiar with where you are. So we're back at the covered bays ancient market, or old market, and we're going over to look more closely at the tower. But this may be our best long distance shot of it. Here I'm walking down an alley that I just found interesting because it looked gnarly, old. But this is what I mean about old rock and brick covered with a plaster and then painted over, as this might have been done at one time, and including the look of large stones that this treatment of the plaster gives it. Notice how this building is held together by these steel braces as it attempts to bulge out, hopefully not finally today. The old trolleys, and they are old, aren't they? The trolleys were introduced here by I think the Austro-Hungarians as a test before they put them into Vienna. I found this interesting principally because it's a relatively new building, but also because it was donated by the state of Qatar. I'm inside what looks to be a very pretty and comfortable little restaurant when the weather's nice, principally because I want to get a view of this tower, which from a distance looks impressive until you get up close and realize that it's actually quite small and modest in design. So we'll go up on top here and take a closer look. That give a little bit more control over the speed of my camera. And presumably this clock tower was used for the same purpose that the minarets used, and that was to do a call to prayer, but I don't really know for sure. Now we're inside the grounds, and I think I was smelling a man's nearby cigarette, and it had a very sweet smell to it. Now what this building was originally, I don't know, because I now realize this is the interior, or the other side, if you will, of the bibliothèque donated by the folks from Qatar. And a pretty building that is. No doubt a library of Islamic studies or something akin to that, I would think. With all of those pinnacles, which looks very much like chimneys, I can only imagine that this was a hammam or bathhouse. And from behind, a different perspective. And usually there was one side for women, one side for men. And if you remember, this had, I think, a trident design as a floor plan. So we would be looking at an outer tong and the inner tong and perhaps another on the other side, if I'm correct. Just looking inside the remains of this archway entry into this old abandoned supported building, which I will not go any farther, but notice it looked like those, I forget what you call that kind of a ceiling that has that design panels in it. So this is not a hammam or bathhouse, but rather this was a and is now, I guess, considered still a madressa. And in that day that this existed, a madressa was a high school. And apparently students would live from 10 to 16 years here. Now, I'm not clear whether that means from the time they were 10 years old until 16, or literally for 10 to 16 years. But this would have been their individual little rooms. This would have been some kind of a furnace. And that's why we see these towers that look like what I thought was bathhouse furnaces or chimneys, because students' rooms would have each a chimney. And here we enter into a classroom, our typical classroom of the day. Again, notice this semi-dome and that typical architecture. Precursor of the credit card, or debit card perhaps, more so. We're now in the back left courtyard of the main mosque across the street from the madressa that we just visited, looking at crypts. And notice that people put out breadcrumbs for the birds and whatever. And everywhere there seem to be contributions gratuitously made for the occasional cat that you see about. The street's a little bit interesting just from this old architecture. And the rest of the architecture down the street. And I'll try and telephoto down to it so we can get a little bit better idea of it. You're a man with an undesirable job, in my opinion, walking along that precipice in this cold, clammy, wet weather. This might have been quite an elegant intersection at one time, and even this building over here on the next corner has some interest. This little Sarajevo Museum appears to be a tribute to Franz Ferdinand, who was assassinated. Here is the heir to the throne, Archduke Ferdinand, arriving in Sarajevo. Here he and his wife, who was pregnant at the time, and here just seconds before, or moments before, the actual assassination, the final assassination. There were apparently two. One, a bomb thrown that was ineffectual. The prince and his wife continued on and visited the city hall, which this represents, and then it was shortly after that that the fellow Principe, I think is his name, killed both of them and the child, unborn, with a rifle. This pistol, number 12, theoretically is the weapon that killed the Archduke, although I thought they said it was a rifle. It's a special edition of the, I think, newspaper. But it's interesting that even at this time, I don't think that the people in Sarajevo, or elsewhere perhaps, could imagine the ultimate horrific repercussions of this assassination. This illustrates the site, and I think this is the bridge that I crossed over up where it says Appel Quay, just to the left is where that mosque was, that had a new mosque and the foundations of the old mosque. Down there in the lower left you see the red bomb symbol, represents where the bomb assassination attempt was made. And then he visited the city hall, which I don't know where that is. Maybe it's 3 or 4 number there. And then continued on up along the quay, and there again the second assassination was made. Apparently at that point, we see right there with the black starburst. So that pretty building we saw earlier is the city hall. One of the earlier trolleys. Here, a very pretty fan. I don't know what it symbolizes. There's no notation for it. We'll get up a little closer to it. Looks like peasant scenes of couples in their local garb dancing. Here's some period furniture. Here's a pretty little clock. Here I'm inside a park just below towards the river from my hostel, I believe. I'm not quite sure what this building was. I don't recall seeing it earlier. The feral dogs here, pretty benign really. Deferential, but surviving any way they can on whatever scraps they can find. Typical throughout the world. There it looks like a chess set that people are playing at. I'm going to walk over and look at what that church-like structure is. Men at chess. There's always In every culture I visit, it seems like there's always some endeavor outside where men gather and play a game and sit and watch others do the same. Someday we will have the technology that I will have my mobile device plugged in and I can just access the history of this man audio. Well, it's a Christian church. No doubt Christian Orthodox, I guess. So this represents the floor plan of the church, and that arrow is probably the entrance, which we'll try and see if I can get into, and then that's probably the front view with some kind of imaginary tower behind it. Was that something planned and never put on, or just something I can't see? Oh, maybe it is something I can see. Maybe it's this artifact here. There is some pretty architecture here. I'm just shooting across the back. Presumably up to the left is a balcony for the choir. I want to take a closer look at this archway. Don't know what this building is, but we'll go inside and see if we can find out if it has any interest inside. Well, whatever it once was, it is now Markdale, an indoor market. And you can see something that looks like it had antecedents from the 19th century, and maybe it did. All kinds of this kind of thing, which look like some kind of cheese of some sort, and various kinds of dried meat. A somewhat original, old-looking clock. Notice the archways in the design here, which probably have windows behind the coverings. This is the Twist Tower in Sarajevo, named for obvious reasons. And I'm thinking that you can go up there, but I probably won't bother. And this is the train station, which I am visiting. One reason that I go do these things is not only to know in advance where my ticket's going to be found, but also because you have interesting experiences, and I'll talk about that later. That gray building just beyond the front of this bus that you see is a wall of the American Embassy compound, which is just about a full block. So here I am on my first Sarajevo tram ride. There, the American Embassy. You wonder why it has to be so large. These are two relatively new office buildings. One of them has a helicopter pad on top. Here, a modern shopping center, or mall, it looks like. This is all near the airport, near the train station and the U.S. Embassy. Some kind of Christian church with its Romanesque type tower. I want to get a closer view of this bridge before I go to dinner. I don't think this is the bridge and where the prince was killed. So the original wooden bridge was built in 1400s, and actually 1500, and it was a wooden covered bridge. It was just demolished in 1894, I think, and a bridge, this one or one similar to it, was built. And it was down there where you see that red somewhere that the prince was assassinated. I'm going to walk down there and see if I can see the plaque. This mosque, an archaeological site that I was at earlier, is this one right here, if I can focus in tight enough on it. There we are. Built in 1544, along with a harem. No big surprise. These guys knew how to live and had the power to do it without the moral restraints. I can probably learn more about this house, but suffice it to say on my own that it was a grand home alongside the river before much of the rest of this was built up around it. And there were probably others that were similar in stature and with people who owned them of similar stature. So it was near this Latin bridge on my right. This is the bridge, but on my right on this bank here somewhere that the prince was assassinated. You may be able to hear the bells of the Christian churches putting out their audio show to compete with the 5 times a day show of the Muslims. This is Begova Choba, and that's this one right up on top here, that one right there. Notice that there's a Taleka Choba, veal soup. So now we'll try that. It's supposed to be kind of thick, but I don't think it's quite stew-like. I think I'll try this when I come back. There are many things that look interesting. One in particular, that sogandolma, onion stuffed with meat. Last night I had the moussaka od tivica with zucchini eggplant. Actually, the zucchini moussaka, layered with eggs and meat. Very, very good. And tonight I'm having Sarajevski sahan with Sarajevo pot. Oh, good. Appropriate for today. Stuffed peppers, zucchini, and onions. Although it's not in a pot, it's in some kind of a tray type thing. But I guess you could call it a pot if you want to. I also have my Sarajevo soda water, or water with gas. And what this is these are potatoes. It's a couple of scoops. And this is onion filled with a rice and meat mixture. This is a leafy something or other, maybe spinach filled with something. And this is another little dumpling type thing filled with rice and meat. The bread is interesting too because it's a soft, it looks like it would have a crust on it that was crispy, but it's not. It's soft and very fluffy almost on the inside. You can see the way it moves and it's shaking. Very good. A dismal night it remains, yet there are people out on this ancient market square. Here I sneak a peek into an upstairs older building, perhaps a home, I'm thinking it is, but there you may be able to make out wood ceilings, and then this, what looks like lovely built-in wood cabinet. Now the rain has slowed down, it's not quite as cold, because it's the end of the day, I suspect. So we get a prettier view, actually, of the cathedral.
Very similar to so long, so specific sound.
He worked for the wrong guy.
Really did. This down is like banking.
Just a little community park. We're outside of Sarajevo center somewhere en route to what's called the Bosnia Pyramid. We're at the site of the Bosnian Pyramid of the Moon, and so far we're very skeptical. And the Pyramid of the Sun is one of these three here. I can't tell which, and I don't know why one would appear to be more than anything than the other, and all of them just look like hills. This is supposedly the evidence.
Years before present. So sediment is cold. Big difference between the temperature in the tunnel and outside of the tunnel. Just a moment. Okay. Phase, the best precise oriented to the towards cosmic north, Bosnian Pyramid of the Sun. Up until 2006, Cheops Pyramid used to be considered as the best precise oriented one if it comes to the orientation towards northern star on the night sky, another name cosmic north. So ever since 2006 we know this here the most precise oriented one amongst all the pyramids ever built on the face of the planet, or at least ever found on the face of the planet. So distance between the pyramid and the tunnel 3 kilometers, 2.9. Okay, and we are northwest so far. So pyramid south is so far away from this place. Okay, here we are. Everybody here? As in a cosmical line. Look, you can see the line, and the line goes around, as if this was made in two layers, lower and the upper, the lid. Number two, you see on the top, you see points, 1, 2, 3, 6 points, just like a map of the Visokos Valley landscape. Who knows, maybe. Sorry, one also, and it points upwards, just like an arrow, side tunnel direction, indication for the side tunnel. There is indeed another tunnel on the left. We will spend more time, the energy, and you will touch the big. This is more.
I feel.
But. And I told you there was the doubt in the mind of us whether this filling material came by man or by flood. So. Ever since we have started to found these dry walls, we have realized that the filling material couldn't come by itself alone neither. No way the flood can make the wall. So to try to fill it, so you can put your hands above, or you can do whatever you want, except to step it. This megalith has quartz crystal in the middle. Crystal, quartz stone. This is ceramic, but inside, not ceramic, but quartz stone, different material, just in the middle, different material. So we did screening.
How do you know?
We did screening.
Okay.
So this material acts as a binding material. Calcium carbonate doesn't allow the megalith to move right and left. They just fix it firmly, you understand? As a cement. So 22 meters.
You want me to do
Okay, let me get that, and then I'm out of here.
Just a long distance shot of a couple of minarets that are pretty because of that aqua color, which may just be copper that's oxidized. Haven't seen that before. I'm now taking a walk along. I'm taking a walk in the opposite direction, or continuing the direction I took the other day. I started way up there at the end of Old Town, Barasica, after I'd hiked up the hill to the right there. Came back down, crossed probably that bridge there, and now I'm going to continue on down this side because there's some interesting modern architecture way down here a ways. Then I'll walk back, I think, part of the other side to pick up anything interesting. This pan I'll make may give us a little hint as to how some of these major streets in Sarajevo might have looked in the old days. Might have looked just exactly like this. Very elegant church-like building. We'll see when I can see what's on that steeple in a moment. What this building originally was. When I get closer, we'll find out what it now is. And this very modern, interesting bridge. More so as we get closer, and you'll see how they've designed that center portion. It's now the Academy of Fine Arts, but I'm pretty sure it was something else before that. Looks too much like a monastery or a church. And here you get a little idea of the simple, and this the simple yet elegant bridge design. Little pan up the muddy spring-laden waters of this river. And there again, looking back on the other side, some older, elegant. This is probably Austro-Hungarian architecture. A gentleman I spoke to thought this might have been an Evangeline church at one time. And it is somewhat rivaled by this slightly tawdry old building. I'm not sure that it's tawdry as much as one might describe patina on new furniture, or I mean old furniture. And there's a Mac reseller inside here. There's no possible way anyone could think they're looking at a tourist. Certainly just an ordinary Bosnian going about his day. A little bit more of a look at the detail on the construction of this bridge. A little bit more of a look at the detail on the construction of this bridge. Gentleman I inquired of inside suggested this might have been an Evangeline church, well restored, maintained, but then it of course does house a Mechline building, a Apple reseller. This building still rivals it across the river, slightly tawdry, although tawdry might not be the ideal word. More appropriately, it might be patina, like on old furniture. Just nosily poking my camera's lens into this art facility to look at these spindly sculptures of ballet dancers.